Welcome everybody to the Sons of Thunder. And yes, we are video recording this because we had some people complain. Well, one guy complained. Did you know this?
That changed everything. That's all it takes, folks.
All it takes is one guy that complained.
Actually, I didn't know this.
You didn't?
No.
One guy complained that the only video that we had recorded of us doing Sons of Thunder was the first one. And
just wanted to see these set of case faces.
they wanted to see the set of faces.
Set of
They wanted to see a set of case faces.
That's good.
That's very good.
Something's wrong with that man.
Something is wrong. But let me tell you what. So I published Catechids, my kids' catechism, available now at Amazon.com. Because one guy asked, "Hey, when are you going to publish it so I can give it to my grandkids?" I said, "Well, I guess right now."
How old is this guy? He's got grandkids?
He's got grandkids. I don't know.
Oh, that's sweet. I thought you meant in the future. Is it a grandfather?
Oh, he's legitimately a grandfather right now. Yeah,
that's good.
So listen, I grew my facial hair back out. I had been
For now.
clean shaven, and I grew it back out.
He'll be gone tomorrow.
You're gonna be gone tomorrow, and I don't just mean from my house.
Just like the grass.
That withers and
very,
fades.
very biblical.
Very biblical. We have to cut back on the banter because we got more than one complaint about the banter. So we've been bantering now for 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Yeah.
That's
good. That's enough banter.
Good enough. Moving on.
More laughing.
We're not that other podcast that does banter.
Yeah.
So whatever one that is. So today we're talking about what is man. What does it mean to be man? And already I've triggered everybody because I said man instead of person, being.
Woman.
I should actually say.
The future is woman.
Yes, that's true.
Female.
The future, the force is female.
We're not going to be around. They won't be around.
They will last for a little while.
The future is robotic.
The future is
metal.
Artificially created in a lab, like an Impossible Burger.
Yeah, I don't know that, dude. Everyone keeps talking about that.
All right. Well, actually, what their Impossible Burger is
it a concept? Is it like a philosophical concept?
No, it's an actual burger you can get from Burger King.
That's stupid, then.
But it's made out of vegetables. But what I was referring to just a second ago is that they're making meat that is going to be grown in a petri dish. And how long will it be before they outlaw cows? Ocasio gets her way, and they're going to outlaw cows, and all the meat's going to be grown in petri. I'll probably go vegan at that point.
You want to eat?
I'm not going to eat
fake cow.
No, I'm not going to eat
food.
Cow culture,
GMO,
beef culture.
What if it tastes good?
That's irrelevant.
It comes right in a nice little patty.
That's
probably.
horrible. The petri dish shaped. They're gonna get like for the quarter pounder, it's just like a thicker petri dish.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds wretched.
It's better than cockroaches. You hear about that in China?
No.
They're growing cockroaches. Everyone's eating China, dude.
Dude, China.
Organs.
We got to talk about China at some point.
Yeah, we should, man.
Yeah,
I told you about that.
Yeah, you broke that story to me. Yes,
dude.
All right, real quick, because do you know that? Well, here one guy complained that we say something controversial and then move on.
There's a lot of one.
Yes.
These guys need to get together.
Well, listen,
kind of group.
Maybe it's the same guy. It could very well be the same guy.
Is this you? It's just.
When I want to make a change, I complain.
Mole set of case.
Yeah. Mole set of face.
Yeah.
But
he complained that we drop controversial stuff and never talk about it.
And we never talk about it.
Okay.
And so what I did was he complained on the actual Apple podcast app.
Yeah.
So what I did was I started changing that and intentionally going back and explaining things. Remember, we've been doing this.
Yeah.
And he actually
made
changed
my life terrible. It's been
your life. My life's great. It's a zero-sum game.
It's good.
Where one goes down, the other goes up.
Well,
you do, but this guy is going to complain.
No, he's fine.
Here's the thing. I changed that and I started explaining things more, and now he actually changed his rating from a 3 to a 5.
That's a pretty good change.
It's a very good change. It's it's a 2/3 20.
All right, let's keep that
rolling. So
China's stealing people's organs.
China is killing political dissidents and street kids.
Yeah.
And harvesting their organs probably while they're still alive.
Yeah. Well, and I heard about this because I went to Mongolia in 2015 with Athletes in Action Wrestling.
Yes.
And our guide lived in Russia for a couple of years, and then he lived in Mongolia. And he was talking to some of the locals that he knew in Mongolian, kind of Russian mix. Mm-hmm. And he was all distraught. And he was like, there's no more street kids in Mongolia anymore. In Ulaanbaatar, the main...
And Mongolia is politically part of China, yes?
No.
Oh, it's not?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
But... So where are all the street kids? Well, what happened, the Mongolians all know this, they said the Mongolian government put them on a train, sent them to China.
That's what it was.
And they harvest their organs.
Yes.
It's good for Mongolians to not have all these street kids bothering the tourists.
Right.
And it's good for China because they get to harvest these organs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, that's horrible. And I've been saying this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It sounds like maniacal, dystopian book.
Yeah, it sounds like a conspiracy
popping up all over
theory.
Facebook now.
Well, now it's becoming clear that they are harvesting the organs from political dissidents.
Yeah.
Probably while they're still alive.
That's what I just read something on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, so you know what? That's actually a perfect segue.
What does it mean to be human? Can you do that?
Why is that wrong?
How come we could do that to pigs?
Yes.
And not people?
Well, and I think it was Al Mohler on The Briefing recently, which is this great podcast. It's a daily analysis of news and events.
From a Christian worldview.
From a Christian worldview.
I say it every morning, every time I listen to
it.
with him. From a Christian worldview.
From a Christian worldview. Al Mohler, I think, talked about this, how in China they have a materialist perspective.
Yeah.
Where if you're consistent with a materialist perspective, and everybody who's listening to this is a self-professed materialist, this is where your worldview leads. Whether or not you
there is no soul, there is no transcendent value.
Yes, all there is the material world,
right?
Matter and energy.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of stuff, and we take some stuff from here and put it in here.
That's right.
Just like changing out a car part.
That's right. It's you open up a computer and you pull out you pull out one of the discs, or what do computers have?
We don't know this stuff.
Do they have? We don't know about that.
No. There's some wires in there. You just grab some.
Pull out some with their microchips,
CPU, and you put another CPU in there.
Yeah. The mainframe.
All my computer knowledge comes from Terminator.
No, okay. All mine comes from.
There's like a Skynet in there.
All mine comes from Reboot, the beloved CGI cartoon from 1997. You don't even remember this. Reboot. It was a CGI cartoon. It was the very first CGI cartoon.
I don't know. I think Gargoyles was the first CGI.
That was not even CGI.
Remember the beginning?
Oh, did they incorporate
very CGI kind of?
Yeah. That was good.
Gargoyles.
That was good. So, but gargoyles were not human. We're talking about what does it mean to be human. So let's start, because there's different ways to approach this. We could talk about what is human nature from a moral perspective.
Yeah.
Are we basically good? Are we neutral? Are we basically bad? Are we broken? Are we, purely products of society, where society imprints identity and value upon us, and then moral value is bestowed through that?
It's like the nature versus nurture. How much does that play in?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So let's talk about really quick. I want to just bring up 4 different views just to sort of whet our appetites. And then I know you've done some really good work on this question.
We're doing some work.
You've done work. I guess we'll see if it's we don't know yet. The jury's still
We'll
up.
see what that one person has to say.
If someone complains, we're gonna have to you're gonna have to change your
everything.
Yeah.
Change my grade on the paper.
Yeah, and change what it means for you to be human.
That's right.
To be consistent anyway. So the question of what is man, we think of that as being obvious. Well, a human is a human.
Right.
It's what we are. We're, and then whatever you think a human is, that you just go, well,
of course, that's it. Yeah.
That's what we're an evolved ape, or we're, basically a complex machine, or let's talk about it. Yeah. Okay. So in other words, the answer is not as simple as you may think. So in the materialist worldview, which we just alluded to, we just discussed a little bit, man is a complex machine or an evolved animal, the product of an unguided process of evolution by natural selection over millions of years.
Yeah.
According to, now we're going across the spectrum of worldviews. We're ripping through in no particular order, but let's go with another M1, Mormonism. And I picked Mormonism because Mormonism is so different. Let's just say it's so unique.
Yeah. Which is funny to, especially people who are not religious. Like Mormonism, Christianity.
Mormons consider themselves to be Christian. Right, totally. Well,
some of them.
In public anyway.
Yeah. To me, they do. They love saying same team.
Yeah. We're Christians like you.
Sometimes JWs do too. And I'm thinking like,
JW's Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, I would never say that because I think that we differ so much that I think it's too important to say, same team, right?
That's right.
But
that's right.
That's a tactic they take.
And
okay,
so then let's talk about one of those major differences.
Let's do it.
Mormonism says that man is a spirit child of Elohim, the Heavenly Father, who himself is an exalted or deified man.
Yeah.
And one of the fundamental tenets of Mormonism is, as man now is, God once was, as God now is, man may become.
Yeah.
And Joseph Smith, in one of his famous speeches, the King Follett Discourse, said that you have imagined that God has always been God. I will
refute this.
I will
right?
refute that. And we heard Jeff Durbin talks about that. Yeah, an apologist and pastor in Arizona. And he mentions that if you ever watch any of his videos refuting Mormonism, that's what he talks about. And that is a very different view from materialism, and we'll see it's a very different view from what the Bible actually teaches.
Right.
Then you've got Hinduism and New Age, or what we might call Eastern religion.
Yeah. And
in Eastern religion, or in Hinduism, and I'm painting with kind of a broad brush because we're talking. There's many different forms of Hinduism.
Right.
The New Age is a diverse complex of belief systems as well.
And so if the pasta sticks to the wall, kind of thing, right? The shoe fits. Because you could say, well, I hold to this view of Hinduism. Right. All right, well, that's not what we're talking about.
I'm not talking
here,
about
right?
you here, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
That's good. If the pasta sticks to the wall,
we're Italian, man.
Well, you are with that stash.
That's right.
Yeah. Hinduism. Well, we didn't mean to besmirch any Italians who were watching.
We
just got
listening?
Who?
Fredo or. It's an Italian aspersion.
Wait a minute.
That's an Italian aspersion.
Yeah. But you just called him Fredo.
I know, because I forgot his actual
whatever
name.
His name is. Chris Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah.
Is it Chris Cuomo? Mario Cuomo's. Mario Cuomo was like the mayor of New York. All the Cuomos.
His brother is the mayor of New York.
His brother is the mayor of New York.
But it's not Mario. That's an Italian.
Mario is his dad.
Mario is a character on.
Mario is an aspersion, and yet that's his dad's
He's a walking.
Actual. He's always like jumping down pipes.
He's just
and when he does, it goes pew pew pew.
Yeah, totally. I get the reference.
All right. Mario was a beloved.
Don't do that. Keep going.
So in Hinduism, it was a beloved
Eastern,
video game when I was a kid.
You can't stop
in
but
the
finish.
80s.
Yeah.
In Hinduism, wow, we got way off track. Atman, which means man, is Brahman. Brahman is their word for ultimate reality or the cosmic soul. It's the closest thing that they have to the concept of God.
It's like the ultimate, right? Yeah.
It's the ultimate. Mm-hmm. It's everything. And that's one of the fundamental realizations in Hinduism is that Atman is Brahman. The self is the universe, and the universe or the world soul is the self. Mm-hmm. Man is one with the universe, although he may not be aware of this. And New Age thought is similar in that the self is God. In New Age thought, it's a little different, but it's essentially the self is a self-creating being, a self-defining being that is ultimately a cosmic entity.
And which makes sense that it's the New Age, right? So they're pulling a little bit from here. They're taking some of our language. Oh, God, Atman, Brahman. Okay, and we're kind of blending it together.
But they very much have their roots in the East.
Yeah.
In the Hinduist.
But usually they're Westerners, right? So they have their kind of concepts.
Right.
That and our language. Right. But they're filling in the content.
Yes, absolutely right. And then one more. Let's talk about postmodernism or postmodernity and intersectionality. Now, this is the newest kid on the block, and a lot of this is still in flux, but here's some information, and I got a lot of this from a guy named Neil Shenvi. You know who that is?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Neil Shenvi is an apologist. He writes a lot about woke ideology and intersectionality, critical theory, critical race theory, critical feminism, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So according to that school of thought, and again, there's various views within.
Sure.
Okay,
there's various views on. Are we very far modern? Are we very like what do they say?
Is postmodernity even a thing?
Right. But what do they say? We're late. It's very late modern.
Late,
right?
yes, sure.
Right.
But here's the idea. Man's nature is debated, but it's generally seen as being without any objective definition or essential nature. They are non-essentialists. Yeah. And a postmodernist would likely object to my use of man to describe humanity. That's kind of why I use it. Just
Z-manity.
Zer. Yeah. Zermanity.
That's offensive.
Neil Shenvi, so's your face. Neil Shenvi says, as a non-theistic worldview, critical theory believes that our identity is not primarily found in our vertical relationship to God, but in our horizontal relationships to other people and other groups. On this view, individuals define themselves and relate to one another and society according to an intersecting network of subgroups, each with various levels of privilege and oppression.
Right.
And that's what you see. I mean, I know you're not big on Twitter. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and
intersectionality, right?
Yes.
They're intersecting all these different groups and patterns and hierarchies and
various groups oppress other groups, and it's by virtue of your oppressor or oppressed status, that's what gives you your identity. But you don't have an essential identity as a human being.
Yeah.
So we've looked at 4 different views. There are countless other views out there, but what does the Bible actually teach about what it means to be a human being? Now, we've talked about these things because it's important for Christians to know what the alternatives are.
Right. But
it's really important to know what the authentic view is too. And we, as Christians, of course, we believe the Bible is the Word of God.
Right.
So help us out here, Park. What is the biblical teaching?
Well, so the biblical teaching is that we are made in the image of God, in the Latin Imago Dei, right? And that's a really easy thing to say. It's not as easy to explicate. What does that mean? Image of God. Does it mean that God has hands? Straight up, a lot of people think that.
No.
I talk on campus all the time, and they're like, "Yeah, we're made in His image." I'm like, "Yeah, what does that mean?" And I'm like, "Well, he's got that beard." And stuff. And you're like, God's spirit, man. And
you talk to college students, and they say this
all the time, dude. I didn't know. What does that mean?
Sure.
And you think of, okay, so he's a white blob then, right? God's this amorphous, well, no, that's not it either. That's why we don't make images of him. That's why we, he says, don't do that. I'm not like you in that way, right?
Yeah.
So how are we like God? How do we image God? And I wrote a paper on this for Van Hoos, last year maybe.
Van Hoos.
He's the Who's. He's the Who's Who.
He could watch this, dude.
I hope he does. I love that guy.
You can't call him Van Hoos with the Who's.
He's the Who's Who.
He's a... This isn't a Dr. Seuss
If he was here, I'd say Dr. Van Hooser, of course.
But he could be here.
I don't know if he's going to listen.
I'm going to send this to him.
He knows.
I'm going to go to minute, whatever minute this is. Just go to...
I'm going to touch this because we don't know.
All right.
No.
Well,
dang it.
I'm going to put my password in.
Yeah. So anyways, what we want to avoid as Christians is a positive feedback loop.
Okay, go on. What does that mean?
What we want to avoid here on this podcast is a positive feedback loop as well. Do you know what that is?
I know what that is.
So it's when a microphone. Maybe I don't know what it is. It's when a microphone goes behind the other one and picks it up.
Oh,
right?
I didn't know that.
And it magnifies it, and that's when you hear that.
Okay.
Someone's got this mic, and they go over here and it screeches.
Yeah.
It's like a positive feedback loop. Jordan Peterson, I took that from him because that's a sweet idea.
Yeah.
If you're trying to define yourself by yourself, right? You're in this loop where you have no referent point, no reference, right?
You know who talks a lot about that? Francis Schaeffer.
You know why he talks about that?
Why?
Because Van Til.
Van Til talks about having a reference point.
Yes.
Oh.
Proximate and ultimate reference points.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And that's why I used in my paper.
Okay.
Proximate and ultimate.
Right. So the idea is if a human is using him or herself as the reference point, that's just a point floating out in space.
Dude, that's Nietzsche. That's what Nietzsche was talking about.
Right.
Nietzsche.
Right.
Right? Are we not falling down, up, backwards all at the same time? We have no referent anymore.
Right.
Who gave us the right to wipe out the sunset? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Erase
God is
the
dead.
sponge that erases the horizon.
Right. We're falling. We're constantly left, right, everywhere.
Yeah. Without a reference point, it's like imagine you fall into deep water in night. I'm just making this up as we go. And
be more Joe Rogan about this. What's the deprivation tank or whatever? Right?
Does he talk about that?
Yeah.
I don't listen to all that much Joe Rogan.
Yeah. It's like, you know what a deprivation
I don't
tank
like
is?
the F-bombs.
There's jokes there, but I can't.
Yeah, it's fine.
So,
so you fall into this
You
fall into the deprivation tank, and if you go deep enough under the water, you don't know which way is up.
Yeah.
And you need some kind of reference point.
Well, in these tanks, it's salt water. You're floating too, right?
Sure, man.
Well, you have no
Taking
idea.
this way too far.
That's the whole point. Is you
Is
don't
that
know.
right?
You can't
Oh,
feel
right,
anything.
right.
You're like, it's lukewarm, whatever,
Okay.
same body temp as you.
Yeah,
And then you start tripping because you have no idea what's
Right.
going on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you don't know which way's up, which way's out, which way's in.
Right.
And if you only were to turn to yourself, that wouldn't give you any clues about
No.
the external situation in which you find yourself.
Right.
And you wouldn't know where you start and where the external world begins.
Right.
Where you end and the external world begins.
Yeah.
So you cannot be your ultimate reference point.
Right. And so Bantil uses an analogy of a diving board. And he says, okay, in a sense, we have to start with ourselves. And we look down, we're in the tip of a diving board. Right? And so that's where we're starting from like a temporal aspect. But we know that that's not the logical starting point. Like the diving board has to be grounded to something, right? And that's the ultimate starting point.
Okay.
And so as humans, you say, well, it's impossible to not start with ourselves. Well, okay, temporally, we start with ourselves, but that's not the logical end, right? We are the proximate starting point.
Proximate meaning near
here.
immediate.
It's, okay, right?
Yes.
So there's something to that. But it's when you make yourself the proximate and the ultimate starting point, that's when you get this positive feedback loop and you're falling left and right all over the place.
Yeah. You're starting with yourself and just ending with yourself.
Right.
And that's a circle that as it goes around becomes tighter and tighter and vanishes into an infinitesimally small point.
Right.
And you end up losing any identity of who you are at all.
And I think it's straight up not workable. Right? Like you're born in a family, you're born in a culture, like all sorts of things that press in on you, who you are, all sorts of stuff like that, right? And that's something that intersectionality, you want no quarter for them, right? But like they're right on the fact that you do have all these different things pressing in on you.
Sure.
Right? And
we're relational beings.
They mark your identity.
We're societal,
Sure.
We're cultural.
So the important thing for a Christian is to say we want to acknowledge both, right? This is what John Calvin talks about when he talks about the knowledge of self and the knowledge of God. He's like, which one comes first? Well, they're so interrelated because you are an image of God.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, he says he doesn't know which one comes first.
Right. Yeah. In the institutes. So all that to say is we do need to affirm that, we do need to look at ourselves, but we don't stop with ourselves, right? We're not the ultimate grounding of our being. We're not the ultimate grounding of our identity, right? So we as Christians define ourselves by what God says of us, right? We are image bearers of God. Okay, so we've established that we're Imago Dei.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
So here I take a triperspectival approach, and triperspectivalism is an approach to all of reality and all of knowledge and all of ethic, everything that is proposed by John Frame and Vern Poitras. I think have we talked about this in the?
I don't think so, but people listening probably haven't heard this before.
So I'm a triperspectivalist.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself?
I would consider myself one. Objectively, I am one, and other people would say that I am.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so that was triperspectival for those who didn't catch that.
Yeah, so it's a threefold way of looking at the world.
Yeah, and the threefold perspectives. There's three perspectives: the normative, the situational, and the existential. The normative is the norm, the guiding principle, the more abstract, the norm.
It's the way things are supposed to be.
Sure. Yeah. That's what a norm is, right? And then there's situational, which is the norms played out in time and space, right? And then the existential is what you toss everything else into when you don't know where it fits.
Yeah.
That's probably in the existential, right?
Yeah.
But that's the more personal, right? The more personal perspective.
That's right. Because you've got the way things are supposed to be, so these laws. You've got the way the world actually is.
Yep.
And then you've got my own internalization of that
Yeah.
experience.
I like to use volleyball for this example, beach volleyball, because I work with athletes all the time. So I'm always explaining this to them.
Oh, yeah.
Because anyone who will listen, I'll talk to them about it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so like beach volleyball, there's rules to beach volleyball. There's norms. If you are playing on a grass court, it's not beach volleyball. Right? Part of it is being on the beach or being on sand.
Yeah.
Right? There's certain rules about hits, how many you can do.
Yeah.
Right? Which parts of the body you can use to hit it. Okay, so there's norms. There's games of volleyball. There's the norms applied in different in time and space.
Yes.
You can play it on the North Shore. You could play it in Florida. You could play it in Brazil.
Sure.
Right? Okay, so you can apply those norms in different places.
Good.
And then there are persons. There's volleyball players. There's the existential component. Without persons playing volleyball, you don't get volleyball.
It's not volleyball.
Right.
Sure.
So you need people to play games by the norms. Right. And so that's just an easy way to look at
that's good.
Tri-perspectival approach to volleyball.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah. So when we bring this back to the view of fleshing out the nature of the Imago Dei, what does that mean? I like to take Calvin's approach to Christ. Calvin talks, and this isn't original to Calvin, but he made it popular.
Okay.
Christ is prophet, priest, and king.
Yeah.
Right? So king is situational. He rules over created order.
Over a realm.
Yeah.
A king is the lord of a realm.
Right.
He has
the universe
he has
is his
control
realm.
in a particular realm.
Right.
To execute justice.
So he's king. He is prophet, which means that he speaks truth. He speaks God's truth, right?
What he says goes.
Which is normative.
It's authoritative.
Yeah. And it's doesn't get any more normative than God.
Yeah.
Right? So he's a prophet, and priest, right? So he's the priest who we don't know where it fits, so we stuff it in the... No. But that's like, priest is like an intimate mediator between God and man.
Yeah, a priest is the one who in the Old Testament, the priest was the one who would mediate the experience by which an individual would deal with their shortcomings, their failings, their sins, and would, by virtue of the sacrifice, restore them experientially and, like you might say, positionally or spiritually, into a right relationship with God.
And socially at that time, right?
Well, that's
in
true.
Israel, right?
If
you were unclean, you couldn't touch people.
That's
you
right.
couldn't come to.
That's right. And so,
service.
so there's a restoration of a person's identity.
Yeah.
That the priest
Very
is
personal.
Very
right?
personal.
Right.
Yes.
So taking that approach, that's Calvin's view of Christ. Christ is the ultimate man, right? He's truly God and he's truly man. He came to live the perfect life of a human, what we should have done.
Okay.
So I think we can take those three offices and apply them to fleshing out the Imago Dei, right? And I want to use some stipulative language here. I want to pull from some other theologians that I like, and use those three categories to come up with our own here.
Let's do it.
That hopefully are biblical, right?
Yeah.
So in my paper, I said that man as image of God is to be a reinterpreter, right? And that doesn't mean we grab God's words and we write over them.
Right.
It means like he gave us his norms and we interpret reality based on that. We reinterpret it. We think God's thoughts after him, right? We're called to have our minds transformed. We're called to think his thoughts. We're told that the beginning of knowledge itself is the fear of the Lord.
Right.
Right. So if we want to know stuff in his realm, we have to acknowledge him.
You know, that's really interesting because even Jesus said, I don't do anything on my own account, but I only say what the Father says.
Speak, I
only speak what the Father tells me to speak, and I only do what he says.
Right.
And if Christ is the ultimate man, how much more so are we supposed to emulate him? Right. And then you've got the Apostle Paul who says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So there's this reinterpreting. You've got God the Father reinterpreted by Christ, and it's important, I think, to note too.
Yeah,
there's that reinterpretation is not a changing.
Right. Exactly.
Right. But
it's in that it's been interpreted. God has interpreted reality, and He's told us about it, and we do that and think our thoughts after Him.
Yeah.
So when we write novels, when we write, Dr. Van Hooser talks about a discipled imagination. C.S. Lewis talks about this, right?
Yeah.
So even in our imagination, in our musing, we're thinking through biblical categories.
Yes.
We're seeing the world. We're seeing other human beings.
Yes.
Through a biblical lens.
We're repeating back to God what He's already said.
Right, and to each other.
That's
right?
good. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're reinterpreters, and I took that from Van Til.
Okay.
So that's kind of a Van Tilian perspective. The problem that people run into is when they isolate one of these perspectives.
Well,
right?
what are the other two?
Let's finish the other two, and then we can go into some problems.
Okay, good.
So reinterpreter, sub-creator.
Okay.
Yeah, you familiar with this language at all?
From you, yeah.
Okay, so it sounded like you said from Jung. From Jung?
Yes.
Of course.
Carl, yes, Carl Jung talks about the archetypes.
Yeah. So So this one I get from Tolkien.
Okay.
How do you pronounce that? Do you say Tolkien or do you say Tolkien?
I say Tolkien.
Tolkien.
But that's because I want to sound fancy.
Tolkien. Yeah.
I grew up saying Tolkien.
Me too. That sounds like Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Tolkien?
No. Like you're thinking of
Harukin?
Zangief. No, what's the guy's name?
The guy who does the
who's the guy with
Harukin?
the claws?
I don't know. I always use the samurai guy. But that wasn't Street
Tolkien.
Fighter.
Who's the guy with the
I don't know,
Venga?
dude. That's 80s. Venga? Venga sounds familiar, actually.
Venga.
Vega was someone else.
All right, if you're listening to this,
yeah.
who's the guy with the
drop
claws?
a comment in the...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Tolkien talks about mythopoesis, like the writing of myths, the creating of myths, right?
Yes.
And so Tolkien talks about what he likes, what makes his work so good is that he's a sub-creator. He's creating these worlds, and they're so complete.
Yeah.
Like when you go in there, everything you touch when you're reading his book, you kick a piece of dust, you kick some dust, and that was someone's remains from ancient centuries when they fought a dragon, right?
Yes.
Everything has history, and it's a full world.
Yes.
And so Tolkien talks about how we are creators under the creator.
Yes.
We're sub-creators in that, hey, you and I never create anything.
We don't create anything ex
Right?
nihilo.
And so that's what he's saying.
Out
so
of nothing.
Like to be a creator is to create to create. But we take what's already been created and we shape it, we mold it, right?
We reinterpret.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so we see this in Genesis, the first call to the human beings, our role as God put on us, right? He said, "Go and multiply, be fruitful and multiply, and cultivate the earth."
And exercise dominion over the animals and stuff. Okay. So
and,
I know,
and our father's first job was taxonomy. Go name the animals.
Sure.
It wasn't create the animals,
right?
But you create a name for them. You're a sub-creator.
Reinterpret.
Right?
I've made
this
these.
One? What's this one? What's this?
I've made these. Well, you know what's really cool too. We know that God names His creation too. He says
He names all the stars.
He calls the stars by name.
Yeah.
So God's named the stars. And now he tells Adam, now you name the animals.
Yeah.
It's not a one-to-one parallel there, but
Sure.
we're doing something that is God-like.
Right. We're imaging God in that sense.
That's right. Yes.
So we image him in our thoughts and we
Yes.
image him in our actions.
Right.
Right. We are sub-creators. We are called to create things as he creates. Right. Like him.
Sure.
Not
yes.
out of nothing.
Yes.
Okay. So we're reinterpreters. We are sub-creators, and we are emulative lovers. And I had a hard time coming up with this one because it's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But all it means is that we love because he loved, right? This is a biblical principle.
Yes.
He loved us first. We love him back.
We love because he first loved us.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're looking up the characters.
Yeah, well.
Is that him?
Guile. But there's nobody named anything remotely close to Tolkien.
I'm just saying, it sounds like a Japanese kind of...
Vega is the guy
If we say it, Tolkien.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
You win. Tolkien.
Yeah.
Zangief versus Tolkien.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're emulative lovers, right? We are called to emulate God's love back to him and back to all of created or his created order.
Yeah.
We are made from love, right? We're made because of love, in love, like a Trinitarian God. The Father who's always loved the Son, who's always loved the Spirit, who's always loved the Father, right? That's the kind of God who created this universe out of love, for his glory, right?
Yes.
It's like the gift from the Father to the Son through the Spirit, right? So that's the kind of God who created this universe, and he created us to image him in our love.
Yes.
Right? So we are reinterpreters, we are sub-creators, and we are emulative lovers. And I think this hits on the three major components of human nature. And we see this in various perspectives. People want to ultimatize one of these perspectives.
They want to take one of them and run with it to the neglect of the others.
Right. Aristotle says we are the rational animal. Right? And he's not wrong, but we're not just a rational animal.
Right.
Right? I like the animal language. You don't like that, huh?
No.
I love it.
No.
Because here's the thing.
Creatures. We're creatures.
Well, we are creatures, right?
We're not beasts.
No, but why not? Because God said, I'm going to breathe into this one, and I'm going to make him my image bearer.
Yes.
I think he could have done that with a dolphin.
No.
And then that would be it. If he wanted to make a dolphin his image bearer.
I don't like playing the what if games.
Why?
Well, because God did what he did because that's who God is.
But he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't have to. But to say, I mean, God is perfectly free in his being, but he always does what he wishes to do.
Sure.
And his wishes and his affections.
All I'm saying is if he had
nature.
wished to make a dolphin his image bearer and they live in the water and just an ape or doesn't create us, that would have worked just fine. He could have made us live in the water, dude.
I wouldn't even speculate.
All I'm saying is well, we're not like an emanation from him. We're not necessary beings. He could have chosen, right?
He made us
the way he wanted to.
I would say yes, but there's nothing intrinsically essential.
Sure, that's what I'm saying.
In ourselves that we are.
Saying.
But again, that's because we're not the ultimate reference point. But right. God is. I wouldn't even say we could speculate beyond that and go, well, God could have breathed into dolphins and made dolphins in his image. No, because then dolphins wouldn't be dolphins. Dolphins would be men.
Yeah. But they would still have flippers, right? Because
I don't think
it's
so.
Not this.
No.
This isn't what makes you human.
No, yes, but what we do with our hands in this world, a dolphin can't do with its flippers. A dolphin can't build a city. How's a dolphin going to build a city?
Sure.
Or just flapping around.
You're just thinking of him as a dolphin currently and not as a image bearer dolphin.
Scream. The sand and the ocean floor is just constantly dissipating back into the water. And no,
that's good. Okay,
that's a
so
horrible idea.
All right, let's get back to the problems. Aristotle, right? There's a lot of philosophers who want to focus on the cognitive abilities.
Yes, right.
There's other people who want to focus on our ability to choose, to will, the will to power.
Yes.
The existential, or that's Nietzsche, right? Mm-hmm. The will to power. The existentialists that being. Oh shoot! What's their expression?
What being is becoming?
No. It's the existentialists like to say that essence precedes existence. Existence precedes essence. Is that it?
Yes,
yeah,
I think so.
Existence
Paul Maxwell could tell
because
us.
because they're existentialists. Right. They're right. So the existence is first, and your essence comes after because you're choosing your essence.
Right.
What you do defines you.
Yeah,
right.
We've not just who I am on the inside, but what I do.
Is that Batman?
That defines
me.
Don't
bring Batman into this.
That's a good line.
I know, but you're making him an existentialist.
He said it.
But all right,
he said it.
Don't do that. Okay. So the first, the people who want to focus on the conceptual idea, that's it's what you think that you are.
It's your mental
right?
intellectual
and
capabilities.
There's great lines about that too. Hey, you're not what you think you are, but what you think you are.
Oh, okay. You never heard that? No.
Dr. Carson said that.
Dr. Carson said
pretty good.
Do you see?
Do you see? Well, he's going to watch that too. Him and Dr. and the Who's are going to watch this, and they're going to be so upset. Okay, so
Carson and the Who's.
Okay, so
I have deep respect for both of those men. If they ever watch this, well, I do.
Okay, so the third one is, man, we know this one pretty well. It's like the squishy feely, like you. It's all about how you feel. It's all about like how you love. And there's some good stuff in there too. You know, you can find this in Aristotle as well.
What would the existentialists say that? Well, no, flesh that out. What do you mean?
The existentialists or the lovey ones? I'm going on to the third perspective.
Okay.
The lovey ones. This would be like the romantics, who responded to the rationalists, who responded to the empirical. You know, they wanted.
Wait. The existentialists are the squishy ones.
The existentialists are the will. They emphasize the will.
Okay.
Right? So some emphasize the mind, some emphasize the will.
All right.
Some emphasize the affections.
I see. So it's the more rationalist. What was the intellectualists or whatever? What's the name for them?
Yeah, the primacy of the intellect.
Right. The folks who put the intellect.
You can call them rationalists.
Rationalists. It's man's cognitive capabilities that makes him human.
Let's go rationalists in that sense. You can be an empiricist rationalist in this sense, right?
Okay, sure.
Because we're saying the mind.
It's the mind.
Then we'll go with volitionalists.
Sure, because it's volition meaning the will.
Yeah.
It's and actually, interestingly, well, no, I won't even go there.
Right. And then there's like the affectionatists.
Right. Well, the romanticists. Sure,
romantics.
I like that.
Romantics. Yeah.
The romantics are what I feel defines me.
Yeah.
So it's what I think defines me.
Right.
It's what I do defines me, and then it's how I feel defines me.
And we use these phrases all the time. We say like, "You are what you love."
Yes.
Right. Or you are what you do.
Yeah.
Or what you think
you are. What you think.
Right.
Yeah.
So
your thoughts become your actions, and your actions become your
right.
character.
Yeah. And what you do in this life echoes in eternity.
Yeah.
Right.
It's deep.
They're all right. But they're all wrong if they do that if they ultimatize one, because these three perspectives are equally ultimate.
Yes.
They're three perspectives.
Love this.
Right? This is
Yes.
triperspectivalism. You don't get one without the others. Right. And we are this unified whole, right?
Yes.
So in imaging
Yes.
God, it's important not to focus on one to the detriment of the others.
Okay, now, let me bring Frame back into this discussion again, okay? Because I'm holding this book. This is We Are All Philosophers. Have you read this yet?
I haven't read it.
Okay.
I have. Have I read it? I have it. But no, I have not read it. That's from The Office.
Oh, is that right? Okay. So, I just finished this book, and it actually took me longer than I thought. Because it's Frame.
That's the problem. That's why it's hard to start on, because
know.
even though he writes really clearly and easy, it's like, that's good, that's good, that's good,
Yeah,
that's good.
Yes. Well, right. And I always, whenever I read a book, I make my...
They can't. It's too white.
I make my... you can see that. My table of contents there in the front. I hope I didn't write anything bad in there. Like I just showed everybody.
Well, it's in cursive, so no one can read it.
Oh, that's true. Well, no one your age or
No one
younger.
important.
Very romanticists.
Yeah.
Because I feel I'm important, therefore I am. I'm assuming that there's no other reason why you would think. Anyway.
Yeah.
We'll edit that out in post-production. So, the thing about this book, Frame talks about how for generations and millennia, philosophers have tried to root out what is the fundamental particle or fact of reality.
Yeah.
And there's all these different schools of thought. We don't have to get into them now because it's
Talking about the one and the many?
Kind of. It's more like, what is creation? What is the universe fundamentally?
That's the one and the many problem, right?
Yeah,
Is
yes. That's related to it.
One, or is
Yes.
everything
Sure.
many?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not identical to the one and the many problem, but it's inextricable from it.
Yeah.
It's bound up with it.
Yeah, the one and the many, or the problem of unity and diversity.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
We live in a universe, right? We
Yeah.
acknowledge that when we say it.
Yeah. And what Frame essentially says is, there's a reason why no one's been able to answer this question.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
I know where you're going.
Thousands of years ago, everybody thought that the universe was atoms. They didn't know what an atom was, but the word atom means
the atomists.
yes.
Yeah.
And the word atom means unchoppable. It's the smallest particle of anything.
Right.
You can't chop it up.
Yep.
Well, then we now know that there are particles that are smaller than atoms.
Right.
And now everybody thinks, string theory says that the universe is nothing but vibrating
Superstrings,
strings.
yeah.
But then Frame, with a twinkle in his eye, asks, and what are the strings made of?
Yeah.
And it's such an obvious question.
Right.
But what Frame says in this book is, people are going to be asking this question forever, and they're never going to have an answer, because there is no particle that is ultimately constitutive of what this world is made of.
Yeah.
There is no ultimately fundamental particle.
That'll just rock your mind too.
Yes.
Because you're like, well, no, except for this one.
You can always go smaller. You can always go more
You can
fundamental.
always chop it in half.
You can always chop it.
Yeah.
And you find out, matter, if you get down to the nucleus of the atom, there's energy. That's energy. But what is the energy?
Right.
And so when it comes to humanity, we look at these three different
perspectives.
And I know I'm going long-winded here, but these three different perspectives, and you want to say, well, is it the mind? Well, no, not exactly. Is it the will? No, because there's the mind too. And is it my feelings, what we now in modern terms call the heart? Well, that's very important, but that's not, my self-concept is not the only thing there is. And so there is, it just becomes this cycle with no reference point.
Right.
Because the feelings in and of themselves have no reference point.
Yeah.
The mind and the will have no ultimate reference point.
Yeah.
And so none of them is a sturdy enough hook to hang all of human nature or human existence on. There is no fundamental one perspective by which we have to look through humanity, which we have to bring in that is.
And that's why we run into this problem of unity and diversity of the one and many.
Yes.
Because we worship a God, we've been made by a God who isn't fundamentally one.
Boom.
Or just fundamentally three. He's one God in three persons. Right? And it's like, well, that's kind of hard to grasp. And you could say, well, yeah, he's one person, one essence, three persons, right? But I don't want to go into Van Til's thing.
Right.
But
Van,
for those of you who know Van Til,
he's okay
we
with
could
there being a
talk later.
contradiction, a seeming contradiction.
Sure, it's a Christian paradox, right?
Yeah.
If any Clarkians are hearing this, they're going to freak out, but that's all right.
That's right.
So,
Clarkians don't watch podcasts.
But the problem is, hey, look, we would expect to find this problem of unity and diversity.
Right.
The monists who think everything is one versus the atomists who think everything is many.
Right.
We expect to find that in people who don't worship a God who is triune,
Okay.
who's one in many.
We really got to, let's pause here.
Yeah,
Because some people's heads are spinning right now.
sure.
Let's just really make this abundantly clear.
Yeah,
There is no one component of a person, of a man, a human, that is more fundamental than the other components.
Right.
When we're looking at these three components of the mind, the
Right.
will,
Right.
and the emotions.
right. And we know this, practically speaking, when you emphasize one.
Yes.
You emphasize your mind to the detriment of your volition
Yes.
and your first of all,
Yes.
you can't quite do it, right? Because
You
I
can't.
don't think they're inseparable.
Right.
But you see the how things go wrong.
Yeah, your life gets completely out of balance.
Yeah.
This is why these, you see these movements in art, and you see these movements in architecture, and you see where there's the Romantic movement in art, there's the Baroque movement in art, there's the
Yeah.
classicalist movement in art. And I guess I just go to art because I've somewhat studied Western civilization, and it's very clear. You can look at paintings from different eras,
Yeah.
and you can see they're emphasizing the emotions here.
Sure.
To the extent that doesn't even look like a person.
Yeah.
Or it just doesn't look realistic.
Right.
And then you've got, this painting, the artist is purely conveying his own subjective definition of what it means to be a person, and that doesn't look like a person, but in a different way than the other one. And then this one is so hyper realistic that it's practically a photograph.
Yeah.
All that to say, we go through these different movements, and you can watch the cycle going around and around of people trying to ultimatize one of these perspectives.
Right. And ultimately that's because we're not living up to what we're made to do. We're made to image God, who's a Trinitarian God, who in creation, each person of the Trinity is taken on a different role, right? And I think it's from these roles that we can see our roles, right? We can see as we're sub-creators, that we are reinterpreters, that we are emulative lovers, right? So it's a Trinitarian view, and we got there via Christ's offices, right? But we see this pattern. Why I'm a triperspectivalist, because you see this pattern all throughout reality, and it's in denying. This is interesting to talk about as well. A lot of good, solid theologians will say with Aquinas, not that he isn't a good, solid theologian, but we'll say with Aquinas that, hey, you know what? We can know from nature that God is one, but we need to know from revelation that he's three, right? But what you and I have talked about, and I'm not sure if Frame has or not, he probably has, but what's interesting about Romans 1 is that he talks about God's nature being revealed in creation through the things he's made. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we talk about his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly perceived in everything that's been created.
Dude, I know you've been studying through Romans 1. Our church is going through Romans 1.
Yeah.
I'm memorizing Romans 1 right now.
Nice.
And just this morning, I exegeted Romans 1, 18 through 23, which was last week's sermon, at least at our location.
Yeah.
And it is right there in the text that God has made plain his eternal power and his divinity, his divine nature. What the King James says Godhead.
Oh yeah.
What he is like.
Yeah.
Well, he is triune.
Right.
So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That we think of the Trinity as being this obscure doctrine that's like this boondoggle that's stapled on to our Bibles. We don't really know what to do with it.
Right.
And this is why nobody knows how to answer that question. And so many people get this wrong. Do Muslims worship the same God as Christians? But absolutely not.
No.
By definition,
They
no.
don't believe in a Trinitarian God.
They don't believe.
Right.
Even though Allah has some qualities that a monad like Allah can't have.
And another thing is that Christians in Muslim countries who speak
Arabic,
okay, yeah, they'll say Allah for God.
Yeah.
Right? And so people are like, are they just saying the same thing? And it's like, look, it's a word.
Right.
What's the content there?
Right.
The content is not like, yeah, we all believe fundamentally in one God, but
Right.
we have a different kind of view of... No. Fundamentally, he's one God,
Right.
and he's three persons. That's fundamentally who God is.
The true God
Right.
is one in
and
three.
we see that in denying that, we get this problem of the one in many.
Yeah.
We get all sorts of different... And I'm not saying that you will look out at creation and say, you know what, God's a Trinity. Right? Like we suppress the truth in unrighteousness, which is right after the part about his nature being revealed in creation, right? Well, we suppress that truth in unrighteousness.
Well, the suppression is first, and then he explains what
that
we're
it's
suppressing.
been clearly
Yeah.
You exegeted it this morning. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Well,
I'm glad you got
that's
that.
why I know it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so... Right, so I'm not saying we're just going to do straight natural theology and figure this out.
No, you're not going to get to the truth about God from just studying nature.
Right.
Because we're dummies. We're sinful dummies.
Right.
That's what we need
But
the
when
Bible.
he reveals it to us, man, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about models of the Trinity with the egg or
No.
ice water
No.
and...
We're not talking about
the
metaphors that don't hold up.
What's that? You know what it's called? Like up in the atmosphere where H2O is all at once.
Oh,
the triple
no.
point. Is it triple point?
Never heard
Dude,
of
it's
it.
kind of interesting, actually.
Really?
But I don't want to get into it because I don't like the people...
All right, so the point is that there's all these different... I do want to know about that.
Triple
There's all
point.
these different metaphors, and that's not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about when you look at creation, there is a multiplicity to everything.
Right.
And oftentimes it's three.
Yeah, right.
There's three
Right.
ways of looking at
like
something.
even our speech right now has content. It has a medium, right?
Yeah.
It's like our words, air going over our vocal cords. The content is the semantics of what we're saying.
Yeah.
And it has grammar.
Yeah.
Right, and we talk about Christ as the divine word.
Well, and also...
Don't add another.
You're
got
talking...
three. We got
no,
three.
no, you're talking.
Okay.
Then there's the air, and then there's my eardrums. There's the... Oh, you know what? There's more triads when it comes to speech.
Sure, yeah, and that's something. If you study frame at all, you'll see there's like this never-ending scale of triads, right? There's like the existential perspective,
Yeah.
and you zoom in on that, and there's a normative existential,
Right.
and so that's been a critique of frame actually. But
All right,
I
so-
don't find it a very powerful one.
As we're wrapping this up,
Yeah,
to be human
yeah,
is to image God, and you're saying that to image God is to exemplify these
it's to be-
three attributes.
It's to be fully walking in rational, volitional, I don't want to say emotional, rational, volitional, affectionate.
Okay.
Right? But
Yeah.
the reason I did the stipulative definitions, the reason I gave it on, because I want to explicitly tie it to God. We have to. So we're not getting in this positive feedback loop. So yes, we can have ourselves as a proximate starting point, but God is our ultimate starting point.
Yeah.
So we are not interpreters. We don't put our interpretation on reality. We are reinterpreters.
Yeah. We don't
And
define
we're
reality.
reinterpreters. Yeah.
We-
It's been defined for us. We
Yeah.
think through his categories.
Yeah. We discover.
Exactly. We don't create ourselves.
Right.
We're not sub-creators. We're not existentialists.
Right.
We're recreators. We're
right.
sub-creators. Sorry, we're sub-creators.
Yes.
We create under the great creator. Right?
good.
And we do it according to his norms. And we're emulative lovers. We're not free to just love anything and this way and we love a dog as we love a woman. No, we're emulated. We emulate his love.
That's good.
And we do it by his norms. And we do it, and we try to conform our will and our affections to the things that he's told us, right? So we see the perspectives all presupposing each other as equally ultimate.
Yes, and what happens then is when you view them all in the context of being an image bearer of God, with God as the ultimate reference point,
Right.
you're no longer doomed to spin around in an endless cycle as you try to make each one primary and then
Right.
realize that you're missing something
Right.
and I got to go to the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Instead, you can view them all in harmony.
Yep.
All the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
And we can have what Frame calls cognitive rest.
Yeah.
We don't know everything that it means to be human,
Uh-huh.
but we know enough to rest in that, and then we can now go and explore the psyche, and we can explore the emotions, we can explore the will. We can really determine, okay, now what does it mean to be human in this scenario, and in that scenario, and if I'm thinking these thoughts. So because we've got our framework, we've got
that's good.
We've got our definition.
We got some biblical hooks to hang things on.
That's
right?
good. Yeah.
Okay, so one last thing before we end here. Okay. There's something we need to deal with, and that is, are we defining humanity based on our capacities, which is a problem. Because if you do that, then what happens when you can't exhibit one of these capacities? What if someone's a sociopath, right? Let's say you can be born that way. Let's say someone is, and you don't have the proper affections or the capacity for affections. Or let's say you're, is it Peter Singer who always talks about the anacephalic? Have you heard that? Someone born with it's
like your head.
Not quite a brain, right? There's like a outer
anacephalic would mean like I don't have a head.
Yeah, but it means like you don't have a brain, I think.
Okay.
So like, are they an image bearer of God, or are they just like what's going on there? And so an important thing for Christians to note is that we take more of a substance view rather than a capacities view. What you are, not what you can do. Right. How do we know? Well, sometimes, so we know because of God's revelation. He's revealed it to us, right? We're not self-defining. We don't define ourselves. We don't interpret ourselves, right? We don't create ourselves. We don't just love ourselves and turn in on ourselves, like an ingrown hair or something. But we are as substance, we are image bearers of God. We have the potential to be sub-creators and reinterpreters and emulative lovers. We don't do these things perfectly, right? And the fallen man, me before like Christ got to me, I was a self-interpreter, I was a self-creator, I was a self-lover, right? I still imaged God.
At least we tried to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were suppressing the truth.
And that's what makes sin so bad, dude. Because I'm imaging God, saying that God is like this.
That's good. Yeah,
it's crazy to think about, right? So I want to acknowledge the fact that yes, it is not in what you do, because you can still couch that in that way. It's our substance, man. It's who we are. It's who He's made us to do. Well, how do we know that? Because we have His revelation. He's told us. Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right. So just to make that abundantly clear, we've talked about these different capacities or faculties. The mind, the emotions, or the affections, you might say, and the will. Well, those are very bound up with things that I do. I think,
Therefore you are.
Yeah, right. I think, I do, I love.
Yep.
Well, if I can't do one of those things, that doesn't mean that I'm not human.
Right.
If one of those faculties is impaired.
If you're in a coma.
Right.
You're still an image bearer of God.
Yes, because of the stuff that I am is human stuff.
Right.
And I know that it's human stuff because I'm sorry. I know that human stuff is always human, even if it doesn't have those fully functioning capacities, because the Bible tells me so. Because I can go back to Genesis 1:27. In the image of God, He created them. And ontologically, and this is what I was saying before we started recording, ontologically, I come from that line of beings that I trace it back to Adam and Eve, which, by the way, is why a historic Adam and Eve is so important.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're the ones about whom it was said, you are made in the image of God.
Right.
Each human being it's not announced when they're born. Image of God.
Right.
We know that we are descended from Adam and Eve.
We trace back to our progenitors, which if I can use that word in every podcast, I will. I love that word.
Yeah, you could definitely use that.
I used it already a couple times.
Yeah, don't mispronounce it.
I think I have before. Wow. Okay, so again, we're talking about we've sought to flesh out what it means to be image bearers of God, and we've done it from kind of a who is man, right, rather than like a what is man. Yeah. What is man is more the substance, and I would say that we're a psychosomatic unity, right?
Yeah. Well, we also talked about who, we talked about what, we talked about why.
That's good. That's good. Who, what is normative?
We'll flesh this out after we get off camera.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Sons of Thunder.
Yeah.
This is the show that gets you thinking about some of the most challenging questions out there.
Yeah.
Approaches it from a biblical perspective and utterly smashes your pre-existing paradigms and keeps you up at night thinking about all this stuff.
Yeah.
So Connect with Parker and me on social media. Figure it out. We're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And then
we're like 5 episodes in and we're like sick of
we're tired of all that stuff.
taglines
We don't
and
have
all
any
that
taglines. I'm
Yeah.
not even going to put theme
You
music.
should put
on
a
this.
thunderbolt. You should put it.
It's just going to be a
Something.
thunderbolt at the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
We
All
got
right.
Yeah.
So until next time, we hope that it triperspectively defined your humanity. We hope that it. Come on, man.
I got nothing on this one. We hope that it inflamed you. That it.
We hope that it split your tree trunk
I was trying to go try perspective.
into 3.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.